Welcome, everybody, to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick, Igniting Leadership Excellence. I'm Rick, and this is my co host, Emily.
Wow.
How's everybody doing today? This is episode number 14 called The Dual Footprints of Mentoring.
So, why are we using this title?
Yes, the dual footprints of mentoring. When we were on vacation in the North Carolina, down at the seashore, your sister and I were walking along the beach one evening as the sun was setting, and I turned around and both of our footprints were in the sand, in the wet sand. I thought, oh, this is going to make a good blog at some point. So I took that picture, and then, yes, it did become a blog. It was a perfect illustration of two people walking side by side, the mentor
Hmm.
and the mentee.
I love that. So, what exactly is a mentor?
Yeah, that term gets tossed around quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I don't believe there's a lot of people that really understand what that is. For starters, in Greek mythology, mentor, yeah, mentor was a friend of Odysseus and who entrusted with the education of Odysseus' son Telemachus, if I'm saying that name correct.
Telemachus.
Telemachus, that's right.
Got
See,
it, D.
I wasn't saying that name correctly. You could tell how much I know about Greek mythology. So, yes, that's who mentor was. And in the dictionary, the mentor is described as a trusted counselor or guide. I read a book a couple years ago called Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder. The author's name is Chip Conley, and he wrote that a mentor is, quote, helps you make the best decisions for you and helps you to become a better person in the context of your work, unquote. So a mentor comes alongside someone, which we're going to talk about a little later on.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So, earlier this year, you wrote a 7-part series for your blog titled Dual Footprints Becoming a World Class Mentor. Can you tell our listeners more about this?
Yeah, absolutely. And the year before I retired from the fire department, I put together a class on mentoring, and I delivered that to my shift. And it's because of the fact that there is a lot of misunderstandings about mentor and being a mentor.
Yeah.
So in my book, The Furnace of Leadership Development, I wrote, quote, one of the most important elements of leadership is developing others and encouraging them to grow personally, professionally, and spiritually in their own leadership endeavors, unquote. Pardon me, clear my throat right there. Hey, I want to add, folks, when I use the word spiritually, I mean biblically. I'm not talking about Eastern meditations, crystals, astrology, New Age. Yeah, not. I don't. We don't dabble in any of that stuff. And when I talk about spiritual, I'm talking about biblical.
Yeah.
So just so everybody knows that. So being a mentor and a mentee requires a commitment on the part of both parties. And that's what I wrote about in that blog series, which you ultimately turned into an ebook.
Yeah.
And a very beautiful ebook
Thank you.
and a colorful PDF document. So let's talk about that, Emily.
Yeah, so let's dive into the 7 commitments. So, starting with number 1, a commitment of time.
Absolutely. Mentorship requires time, and it's a commitment of time on the part of the person being mentored and the person who is doing the mentoring. If neither party is going to commit the time to it, this thing is going to fail right off the bat. And so committing the time means putting it in your calendar, scheduling a time to do this. If it becomes a haphazard thing of, well, hey, okay, I'll text you and we'll schedule the next time. No, take care of it right away. Get it on the calendar and stick to that time unless something comes up. And, when we talk about time, we all have the same amount of time, 24 hours a day. Nobody gets any more, Nobody gets any less. So it comes down to priorities. When people say, "Well, I just don't have the time to be mentored," well, you're missing out. And
Yeah.
for someone who says, "I don't have time to mentor someone," well, that very well could be true. And take a look at your schedule because maybe somebody who's working for you really does need to be mentored. And again, I want to add, I should have said this at the beginning of the podcast. You don't have to be a firefighter to listen to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick. We have a number of people who are listening to our podcast and watching this on YouTube that are not firefighters because we talk about leadership, we talk about everything related to leadership, and mentoring is part of leadership. So we hear a lot about time management. One thing that I love as being part of the Maxwell Certified Leadership Team is having access, a lot of access to content from the team. But John Maxwell has said something that I wish that I had known years ago when we hear about time management. Like, no, again, we all have the same amount of time. It's managing our priorities. So if a person wants to be mentored, it's managing your priorities. If a person wants to mentor someone else, it's about managing that priority. So we're just going to set that time, the day, when they're going to meet, the time, and it could be flexible.
Yeah. So the second commitment is a commitment to be transparent. Oh, is that a doozy?
Yeah, that is. Oh, yeah, that is. What I'm curious. Why do you think that's a doozy?
Well, to be transparent is really you have to be vulnerable
Mm,
with your mentor. And I think the mentor has to be vulnerable with their mentee, the one that they're mentoring as well, because you have to be relatable. Like if you come to someone who acts like they're perfect, well, then you're not going to want to show them your imperfect sides. There's going to be that pressure, and there has to be safety in the conversation and with the people as
mm.
well. Like the mentee has to feel safe with their mentor, and I think the mentor has to feel safe with their mentee as well.
Absolutely, Emily. I mean, that's a fantastic way how you describe that. And there's a lot of phonies, that are out there. And I'm part of a men's cohort where we meet monthly through Kingdom Way Ministries here in Loveland. And the leader of the group, Dan Anderson, who's also the leader of that ministry, he had us read a book called Abba's Child.
Mm.
And chapter 2 is called The Imposter. And that's exactly what you're talking about. There are a number of imposters that are running around out there. And hey, if you don't believe either one of us, just go to Facebook and look at all the beautiful, fantastic people that are there, that are on Instagram, that everything is going hunky dory for them, in their lives.
Yeah, that's why it's going around as Instagram versus reality.
You're right. Yeah, Instagram versus reality. Listen, people, if you're not going to be transparent, uh, don't bother being mentored. And if you're not going to be transparent, don't bother trying to mentor. Oh, I said that word try. Don't bother. Yeah, don't bother to mentor someone because you need to be transparent. When I wrote my book, The Furnace of Leadership Development, I was determined that I was going to not only share my successes, but I was going to share my failures as well. I've got a number of leadership books on my shelf, and there's a lot of them where the author never points out their mistakes. The author never points out how they screwed things up in life, but they're quick to point out what somebody else did wrong. Now, I didn't want that. I want people to learn from the mistakes that I have made. And Emily, I know for a fact that that's how you believe as well. So the
Yeah.
transparency has got to be there because without the transparency, there's not going to be growth.
Yeah.
And transparency means trust and honesty. And when you're mentoring someone, unless the other person is doing something illegal that requires them to be reported to law enforcement, you keep it amongst yourselves. You don't go running around, I don't yeah, let me try that again. I don't mentor Joe Schmuckatelli and then schedule coffee with my friend that afternoon and say, man, you wouldn't believe how screwed up Schmuckatelli is.
Yeah, there's a level of confidentiality.
Yes, absolutely. So
Yeah.
that's that second one there, Emily, a commitment to be transparent.
So the next commitment is to slay the ego.
Yeah, yeah, put a stake through the ego. Oh, so much pride and
Mhm.
arrogance that exists in
Yeah.
our society today. Now, it's unbelievable. People do not want to, admit that they are less than what they are. They do not possess that self-awareness. And hey, listen, folks, until we slay the ego, we are not going to grow
Yeah.
because we're going to walk around all puffed up. And I've seen it. It doesn't matter what profession it was. I've seen it when I was in the Air Force. I've seen it when I was in the Marine Corps. I've seen it when I worked a couple civilian jobs, and I've certainly seen it in the fire service as well. There are some people that just walk around puffed up. Their egos are so big, you can't fit them into a room. And
It's
oh,
everywhere.
yeah, it is. It is everywhere. So we've got to be self-aware with that. Proverbs 11:2 in the Bible says, when pride comes, then comes shame. But with the humble is wisdom. If we are going to mentor someone, or if we are going to be mentored by someone, we got to put a stake in that ego and humble ourselves. Otherwise, it is not going to be successful whatsoever.
Absolutely. And then the next commitment is to listen.
Oh boy. What'd you say?
I knew you were going to do that. I was just waiting.
Yeah,
Guys,
a commitment to listen. Listen, listen, listen. Dr. Joyce Brothers, who was a psychologist, a television personality, and a writer, she said, quote, listening, not imitation, may be the sincerest form of flattery, unquote. Because many times you may have heard, hey, flattery is the sincerest form of imitation. But she was saying, no, listening to people. And that requires discipline.
Yeah.
That means, hey, put away the stupid cell phone. And you're mentoring, put away the cell phone. Now,
Yeah.
hey, granted, I want to add the caveat in here. If mentoring is taking place and you're doing it on duty in a profession such as fire, yeah, that the tones come in, right. It's done, you're going to blast out the door to respond to, whatever it is. Or if you're doing something off duty and you're on call, that's different. Or if you're a volunteer firefighter and you're mentoring someone or you're being mentored by someone and the call comes in, okay, those are caveats. No, that but otherwise, put away the phone, put away the radio, put away the pager, pay attention. And paying attention doesn't mean that you're formulating your answer to immediately respond to the other person so you don't hear them. Paying
Yeah.
attention means you sum up what you are hearing. Now, yeah, I talk a lot about John Maxwell in these podcasts, but the guy's got, I think I just read the other day, he's written some 95 books. But one
Wow.
book that I would definitely recommend is Everyone Communicates, You Connect. Hey, we could be sitting across from someone else and flapping our jaws and our gums, yeah, and the tongue's moving, but the person on the other side there, uh-huh, yeah, and didn't hear a word you said.
Yeah, they're just tuning you out.
Yeah, in the fire department, we practice a concept called closing the communications loop. And that was applied on scene, but it's also something that needs to be applied in a non-emergency situation or any conversation. And what that means is, I'll give you an example. As we respond to a structure fire, that first in company, the officer gets off, he does a 360, walks around the building, gets on the radio, and reports what is seen. When I arrived on scene, and before I would assume command of that emergency, I would contact that first due incident commander. That person and I would repeat back to him what he had said in his size up report. And then I would ask, is that correct? And then that gave that officer opportunity to say yes or no. here's something additional, that I possibly missed. That's closing the communications loop. And in mentoring, we need to make sure that we're closing that loop so there's no cloudiness there. There's nothing worse than being with somebody in a mentoring situation or coaching, which coaching and mentoring are different, folks. Coaching draws out the answer from within the other person. It's not what people typically think about from a baseball coach, football coach, that type of thing. That's more towards mentoring. Mentoring is someone who has experience working with someone who has less experience. It's almost like a consultant type relationship. So there is that difference right there. They all require listening. We must listen. We must actively listen and work to listen.
Yeah,
Have anything else to
absolutely.
add with that, Emily?
Well, I just really like what you say about discipline because it also shows that you care about what the other person has to say. And by caring, that is going to develop a better relationship as the mentor or mentee. And it shows that they do care for me and that, okay, I can trust them. And you show that care, then it builds the trust, it builds the honesty, and it builds the transparency. So just kind of all builds on top of each other.
And something that you don't know, but in one of our future podcasts, we're going to be talking about the five appreciations of language at work. I might be getting that title mixed up a little bit, but one of those appreciations at work is being listened to. So folks,
I like that.
Tune in. I can't remember what episode that is, but Emily was not aware that that's what we were going to be talking about in that particular one.
New news to me.
Yeah, news to you. So what's next on our list, Emily?
The next commitment is to grow and develop.
Yes. Hey, you go put a seed out in the ground, whether it's a flower, corn, anything of that nature, is you got to work it. It's got to be intentional. Number one, if you just go throw the seed out on top of the soil, what's going to happen?
Nothing.
Nothing, except some bird's going to fly there and
Pick
take
it
it up.
Yeah.
Pick it up and look for the next seed in there. So what that means is there's got to be an intentional effort, that commitment to grow and develop.
Yeah.
Listen, if you're wanting to be mentored and you're not making a commitment to grow and develop, don't waste the mentor's time. Don't go away and don't come back until you're really committed. And I say, well, gee whiz, Rick, why? I think that goes hand in hand. No, it doesn't, because over the years I have had people come to me, and I've learned this lesson. I've had people come to me and they've wanted to be mentored, but then there's no commitment there on their part to grow and develop. And that becomes very frustrating. So until you say, yes, I want this, again, you're self-aware. I need this to grow. I need this to develop. I need to have someone else who's been further down the road. One thing that I've seen in fire departments is, well, you get a new firefighter on the crew, and maybe you have another firefighter who's been on the job 6 months ahead of them, say, okay, you're going to mentor them. That's a fallacy, folks. That really is. Or it was like, well, okay, the guy's just off his probation. He's been on the job now for 13 months. Now, essentially what that is that 13-month firefighter is showing the new firefighter the ropes. It's really not a true mentoring relationship that's taking place. Find the guy or the gal who's been on the job longer to mentor that person, and someone who is going to tell the truth, which I don't want to jump ahead too far with that. But we have to be intentional again. It's like a desire. Everybody gets hungry. And then what are you going to do? You get hungry, you got food in the refrigerator, in the pantry, you're going to run down to Burger King, In-N-Out, Jersey Mike's, someplace like that. You're going to feed yourself because it's intentional. I gotta eat. And growth comes along the same way. If you are the mindset that I have arrived, well, then you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Because you have not arrived. None of us
We'll ever
have
arrive.
arrived. So, Emily, what else do we have here on our list?
Next up is commitment to accountability.
Oh, yeah, accountability.
Ooh.
Ooh, that's such a nasty word for so many people in our society today,
Mhm.
isn't it? It's because it's everybody else's fault.
Mm.
I'm the way I am because of my mommy and my daddy. I'm the way I am because, you know, uh, mommy didn't change my diapers. I'm the way I am because my teacher didn't give me a ribbon like all the other class members. So it's not my fault. Yeah,
Having a victim mindset
yeah,
and not taking ownership of
right.
your problem.
Exactly. A victim mindset, which, hey, if anybody out there, if you're listening or watching this and you got a victim mindset, get over it. Okay. Get over it. Grow up, put on your big boy or your big girl pants, and move on because you are accountable.
Yeah.
Responsibility and accountability. Responsibility. Yes, it's my responsibility to do this. And yes, I'm accountable for what I didn't do it right. Okay, why not? Were you trained? Yes, then why didn't you do it right? One of the things that I felt that the Air Force was doing very well at the time, and I don't know if they still do or not, but in the training jackets, after you graduated from any school, but I'll use the fire school on this, and you get out to your permanent duty station, you're assigned a reporting official. And that's somebody who has the authority to write, evaluation. But the training jacket had all the tasks. Now, in the fire service, we use task books, but and it's administered a little bit different. But I'll come back to that in a moment because I want to talk about how it was in the Air Force. You'd open up the training jacket and it would have a skill. Let's say ladders. And then your reporting official would watch you, ensure that you knew how to do this. And then you both sit down, you'd circle which one was being signed off, and you'd initial it. And so that way, a year later, if somebody comes back, the guy came back and said, well, I didn't know how to do this. I didn't learn it. Pull out the training jacket and say, oh, hey, isn't this your initial right here by ladders? Yes. You initialed this, you certified that you could do it, and I watched you. So now what you got is an excuse, which is my wife and your mom says an excuse is the skin of reason stuffed with a lie. And in our fire department, we adopted task books. Task books have also been used in the wildland arena. And it's a step process. There's accountability that is in there is yes, I have watched this person perform this particular task here, and I'm going to sign off on this, stating that me, Rick, has seen them perform this and they're ready to move on to the next step. So that accountability. I participate in a weekly roundtable. We meet on Thursdays at 2 o'clock. We go through a value each week. And at the end of that, there is accountability. We rate ourselves 1 to 10, five's lined out. You cannot say you're average on this one. Why we gave ourselves this rating? What would happen if we improved that rating? Who do we know that lives that rating? And an action step for the next week. So this Thursday, when I show up at the roundtable, I will be held accountable for my action step that I wrote down. So it's a great thing,
Yeah,
being accountable.
absolutely. So a few minutes ago, you mentioned that a mentor comes alongside the mentee. Could you talk more about that?
Yeah, and I want to refer to the Bible in Titus chapter 2, verses 1 to 8. I'll read these. But as for you, speak the things which are proper for sound doctrine, that the older men be sober, reverent, temperate, sound in faith, in love, and patience. The older women likewise, that they be reverent in behavior, not slanderers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they admonish the young women to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, homemakers, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God may not be blasphemed. Likewise, exhort the young men to be sober minded, in all things showing yourself to be a pattern of good works, in doctrine showing integrity, reverence, incorruptibility, sound speech that cannot be condemned, that one who was an opponent may be ashamed, having nothing evil to say to you. I wanted to read those 8 verses to get the context, but jumping back to verse 6, there's one word, likewise, exhort. Exhort. What's an interesting thing about that word exhort is, pardon me, excuse me, is it in the Greek word is parakleo, and it means to summon alongside. Now, for those who are listening that say, well, I'm not the older man, or I'm not the older women. Well, let's look at it this way. Are you older than anybody else?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, you are. Every last one of us is older than somebody else. So I caution you not to get caught up and say, yeah, if you're 30 years old, to say, well, I'm not 70 years old, so that doesn't apply to me. No, we are all older than someone else. But I love that.
Right. Insert
Yeah,
something real quick
absolutely,
too. It's
absolutely.
not only older than someone else, but you could be older in your experiences.
Ah,
Maybe you're a different age, but in my experiences, I actually might be able to help someone in their 30s because they haven't gone through what I've gone through.
mm,
But I can take my experiences that I have had to help out others. So it doesn't
yes.
always have to be older versus younger.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very, very good point, folks. And, Emily being my daughter, I know what she has gone through, over the years. And she has carried a lot. And she is absolutely right. Her experiences can be carried over to help somebody who is older than her learn. But for that other person to learn requires humility.
Yeah.
Humility. But I love that Greek word
Yeah.
parakleo, to summon alongside, walk alongside, the dual footprints that we are talking about.
Yeah.
So, what else do we have here, Emily?
So, the person who seeks a mentor is the individual who desires to grow and develop in their life. This is not someone content with being average.
Yeah, average, average. I've probably got it buried away here someplace. And several years back, I think it was when I first became a battalion chief, I had come across a really interesting table about what average is. Hey, average is number 5 on the round table action steps that's crossed out. That's average. There's a lot of average people, who are out there. Now, if you're desiring to be mentored, that's already starting to elevate you above the average people who are there. Yeah, you know them, the people, who show up at work 1 minute before starting time. And I'm a member of Toastmasters also. And our chapter meets at a local hospital at 7 o'clock at night. And I'm amazed every time I go over there to the hospital how many nurses are rushing in, tailgating me, cutting me off to get into the parking lot, and then they just saunter into the building. Clearly, they're only arriving a couple minutes before 7. It makes me wonder. Now, maybe some of them, are the ones who are really in a hurry because they're busting in. They're probably the ones that are always early for work, but something happened today that is making them run late. The other ones who are showing up at 6:59 and are walking in with me and are just sauntering along makes me question: Are they the average nurse?
Hmm.
Do you want the average nurse working on you?
Oh, no.
I don't. Do you want the average doctor working on you?
Definitely not.
No. Yeah. Hey, you're going to go down to the airport and you're going to fly between, here and Philly. Do you want the average pilot up in the front of that plane?
No way.
I don't. You know, it, I've had kidney stones in the past. I don't want the average doctor taking those things out of me. So this notion, of average, get rid of it. Get rid of it. Because when you demonstrate that desire to grow, then you are not content with being average. What happens to the average player on your favorite hockey team, baseball team, basketball team, football team?
They get kicked out
They get kicked out.
or sit on the sidelines.
Yeah, or sit on the sidelines. They don't last very long.
Yeah.
So someone who is growing is not content with being average. Yes, you said, Rick, you just said that. Yes, and I know I just said that because I'm reinforcing that. And also, the mentor is someone who is not average. They are not content to sit on the sidelines. They are someone who is living out Luke chapter 12, verse 48, and I'll paraphrase it: to whom much is given, much is required. To whom more is given, even more is required. Now, for those of you who automatically slip into well, that's money, that's, material. No, no. Uh, God has allowed me to experience many things over the years. He's given me life. He brought me through medical problems and issues that could have very well taken my life. And so now I want to give back.
Yeah.
Emily is giving back. She just mentioned that here a few moments ago, and being able to mentor somebody who might even be older than her.
Yeah.
So, Emily, as we close out this episode today, let's talk about those commitments again.
Yeah. So it was a commitment of time, a commitment to be transparent, a commitment to slay the ego. I like that one. A commitment to listen, a commitment to grow and develop, and lastly, a commitment to accountability.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And for those who are listening and watching, if you would like a PDF copy of that document, send me an email at rick@fireofficerleadershipacademy.com. Again, that's rick@fireofficerleadershipacademy.com. And I will email that to you at no cost. That'll be free. So
And they'll see the picture of the dual footprints.
that's right. You'll see those pictures there of the dual footprints. So, hey, listen, folks, if you have found this episode to be useful, please like and subscribe and share and pass around the word. Again, you don't have to be a firefighter to listen to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick, because I think if you heard a lot here today from Emily, who's not a firefighter, has never been a firefighter. Also, visit my website, fireofficerleadershipacademy.com. The link is in the show notes, and you can learn more about the services that I offer, the classes that I teach, and what I do with coaching, and then also the program that I have to help people prepare for interviews. You can visit my website to see my weekly blog. I'm on LinkedIn. That gets posted on there. And for the firefighters who are listening here, I do have a group on Facebook called the Firefighters Leadership Network. And I would encourage you to look that up if you're on Facebook and join, and then I will approve it. You don't have to be active firefighter, because you have retired firefighters in there as well as volunteer and paid and wildland firefighters and military firefighters. So that's it for today, Emily. And until next time, we'll see everybody later.
Bye.
So long.